Thank you very much. Well, good evening, and thank you to this very important event in this system that we are engaged in and the society that we live in. Debate and dialogue is always a good thing, and this is an exciting evening. I appreciate very much that League of Women Voters asked us to host this in the city of Bismarck at the historic Belle Mayhews. Appreciate that very much. I'm honored to be your mayor, by the way. I first of all want to thank the co-sponsors of this important debate and event, the League of Women Voters, the Bismarck Tribune, and Dakota Media Access. This is an historic event tonight because it's broadcast live on Government Access Channel 2 TV in Bismarck, statewide on Mid-Continent Channel 323, and it is also streaming online at freetv.org, at bismarcktribune.com/debate. And that makes this a very historic event. Well, the election is a short 2 weeks away. And this is, as they all are, very important elections. I'm 60 years of age. I've been able to vote since I was 18. And I have not missed that opportunity. That's the way I was raised by my parents, that you need to vote. And this is a very historic event that we will have November 4th. Well, without further ado, I want to introduce the candidates for the first debate, the current North Dakota Ag Commissioner, Doug Goring, and his opponent, Ryan Taylor. And then I would also like to welcome back to the stage Ellen Huber, a dear friend of mine who is also the Business Development and Communications Director for the City of Mandan. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening, Mike.
Enjoy the debate. Thank you very much. And I'll turn this back over to Ellen.
Good evening and welcome to this debate with the candidates for North Dakota Agriculture Commissioner. We welcome incumbent Doug Goring and challenger Ryan Taylor. I'm Ellen Huber and I will serve as your moderator this evening. Joining me on the panel tonight are Mark Conlon, 20-year editor of the Farm and Ranch Guide, and Dana Bond, who represents a number of agricultural and economic development organizations. This evening's debate takes place in the Belle Mayhews Auditorium in Bismarck and has been organized by the League of Women Voters. It's co-sponsored by Dakota Media Access and the Bismarck Tribune. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization that promotes the informed participation of citizens in their government. This is intended to be a respectful exchange of ideas. Our purpose this evening is to provide voters with information about candidates and their positions on issues that affect the people of North Dakota. We ask the audience here tonight to reserve applause and other comments until the debate has ended. Tonight's debate's format is as follows. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to respond to each question. After both candidates have responded to the question, we invite them to engage in crosstalk, a dialogue about the issue raised for no more than 3 minutes. We encourage both candidates to participate in the crosstalk segment, and either may begin. Candidates are asked to comply with our time restrictions so we can get to as many questions as possible. Our timer tonight is Connie Hildebrand, and she will let you know when your question responses are down to 30 seconds, then 10 seconds, and the point at which you need to stop. For the crosstalk segment, she'll indicate when we're down to 1 minute and stop. Now let's get to our candidates. Each of you will have 60 seconds to make an opening statement outlining your top 3 issues. Mr. Taylor, you may go first with your opening statement.
Thanks, Alan. I'd like to thank our hosts. I want to thank my wife, Nikki, back at home doing the single parenting tonight. I just want to say, as we enter this race, we did it dedicated to agriculture with a family history that's 111 years deep in that business. Came into the race with 10 years of experience as a state senator and a policymaker, and now we bring it all together to discuss these three topics relating to agriculture and policy. Three main issues that I've seen that are backed up with personal conversations on the campaign trail is one, rail access to our farmers who've lost $160 million due to the bottleneck that they face in rail, and they can't face that for another 5 years. Second, our landowners' Bill of Rights that we designed for farmers and ranchers who need to make a living on top of the ground, while our energy developers make a living from beneath the ground. Third, knowing that North Dakotans want leadership in an ag department that doesn't have excessive turnover and emanates trust and respect. Agriculture is North Dakota. It brought us to the dance, and our leadership will decide our way of life for years to come.
Thank you. Commissioner Goring, you may go next.
I want to thank our host also, the League of Women Voters, the Bismarck Tribune, Dakota Media Access. I appreciate this opportunity, and I want to thank Ryan for participating tonight. My son and I, Dustin, farm south of Minokan, and I got to tell you that he is very optimistic about the future, even when we're dealing with depressed ag markets like we are. But the main job of the Agriculture Commissioner is to regulate and advocate for agriculture. And to do that, we need to look at developing solutions for real problems with real solutions like we have with the Port of Vancouver Agreement, the Pollinator Plan, and our Modified Mediation Program. But we also need to support initiatives that best serve North Dakota, like diversity, innovation, research, and trade, because we produce far more than we can consume, and we need to stay on top of federal overreach and regulations, and we need a common sense approach to regulations that fosters agricultural and energy development in this state.
Thank you. And now we'll move on to the questions. Commissioner Goring will be the first candidate to respond to the initial question. Our first question will be presented to you by Mr. Conlon. I'll now open, I'll defer to Mr. Conlon.
All right. Commissioner Goring, what do you like or dislike about the current Farm Bill? And if you could, what would you change or improve?
Some things about the last Farm Bill that were put in place. I certainly appreciate the fact that we put in there the Livestock Indemnity Program, the Livestock Forage Program, and the Emergency Livestock Assistance Program. Those were deeply needed. There are very few products that are available for our livestock producers. Those are some of them. We did enhance crop insurance in this last Farm Bill. Could have went farther. I really believe that we fell short in that area only in this respect. We did away with direct support to farmers, and we could have done more by putting more support into those premiums to help farmers buy higher coverages and assist them to mitigate risk and manage risk better. The last area that I was very deeply disappointed in was conservation compliance and how it ties the hands of our farmers and ranchers, their ability to manage the land after having so many issues that were surrounding crop insurance and the fact that they really felt like they were shorted in that area. This did not give them the ability to go out there and manage the land and the resource the way they feel they needed to.
Mr. Taylor?
Thank you, Mark. The 2014 Farm Bill, I think, is a testament to the fact that North Dakota needs a safety net, and we're glad to have gotten it. I think in terms of the positives and or the negatives, as a cattle rancher myself and someone who's been through some blizzards, and every time we've had those situations in the past, you've had to go and get a declaration, and you weren't sure if you were going to get it or when you were going to get any assistance. So having permanent funding for livestock indemnity and forage programs is a positive. Made a number of changes in terms of switching from direct payments to ARC and PLC programs in this, which I know is going to take some work to get everyone pick the program that best suits them. If I was going to change anything, I think I'd go back to the process itself of how it left North Dakotans really wondering if they were going to have a farm bill. When we looked at the Congress and some of the gamesmanship that took place of splitting the titles, a long-standing agreement of making sure that we both raised food and supported those who eat the food in America. I think going forward, we need to make sure that we go forward in a unified front because it is so important to North Dakota's farmers and ranchers. all these programs really backstop the number one segment of our economy and make sure that we have an economy that works for years to come.
You know, some of the concerns here go back to the fact that there's a lack of understanding about agriculture in this nation and at sometimes even in this state. The New York Times and the Washington Post did us some of the greatest disservice by what they wrote about and told the story without actually understanding. When we got into the crop insurance debate, they talked about 80% subsidies on premiums. The reality is that only works when you're looking at an enterprise unit, not an optional unit. Most of our producers were working with optional units. That was closer to 47 to 56% support. When you have those types of things taking place and they tell the constituents, they tell the public about that, you don't have the ability or the opportunity to go back in and fix it. Congress's hands are tied and they feel like they bend or have to bend to some of these issues. And it goes back to the whole issue about conservation compliance. You end up with activist groups that are pushing this issue, and then we end up with more farmers and ranchers being hamstrung in this situation, getting frustrated and just wanting to pull out of the program altogether.
I think it's going to be the job of the Ag Commissioner to make sure we articulate very strongly what agriculture is all about. What is the story of our family farmers and ranchers in North Dakota? And we need to be open to visit with reporters at the New York Times, if that's what need be, with people that are getting farther and farther removed from agriculture, even if it's in North Dakota. We like to think we're still pretty close to agriculture, but we're getting a generation or two away in some cases. And I think an Ag Commissioner that has a background in agriculture that can also tell that story and do it in a way that brings people together is a strength that we need to have as we go into the next Farm Bill debate.
I think it goes back to telling a personal story about agriculture is connecting with the audience. And quite frankly, most of the public doesn't understand the relationship that they have with agriculture. We have the most inexpensive, affordable, abundant food supply in the nation. And on top of that, we employ in North Dakota alone almost 25% of the workforce. Nationwide, almost 19% of everybody's paycheck, and that 19% is supported by agriculture. And if you don't respect and understand that, then you're going to be challenged with trying to figure out, why should I care about agriculture? Why should I support agriculture? And that's a problem. And it means making it personal. It means looking at choices, supporting choices that they have in the supermarket, but also in cropping practices and systems in this country. And then when you do that, tell them that they need to respect those choices.
I know Connie's held up the sign, so I think we can agree that agriculture is both important in North Dakota and important to anyone that eats. So we can take the next one. There's the stop sign.
All right, we'll move on to the next question with that.
Mr. Taylor, the EPA Waters of the United States proposal is concerning to North Dakota citizens. Please define what you see as a proper role for federal agencies dealing with agriculture and the environment in North Dakota.
The Waters of the U.S. Changes that were proposed, and I came out early on that in opposition to it as we looked at what effect that would have on North Dakota's farmers and ranchers. I think at the root of this is the fact that this is beyond the rule as it was written in terms of navigable waters, and this is not the way to go about setting this. If the North Dakota legislature or others wanted to define what the navigable waters are and name them, then we would know where we're going to work from. We know that we have to stand up for North Dakota agriculture and comb the Federal Register when these things come through, and I would be dedicated to that in our Department of Agriculture to make sure that we're doing that on a regular basis. When we look at the rules, I think we also got to make sure that we understand where people are coming from, that they want clean water, obviously. We want water that we can drink and that we can give to our children and even give to our livestock on ranches. And certainly we want to keep that clean, and we know that agriculture will play a key role in making sure that it is clean. And if we're worried about federal oversight, I do believe that we have a role as state policymakers. If we can, one, advocate against these rules and work with our federal delegation, but also Ag Commissioner has a seat on the Water Commission in North Dakota. And maybe we need to get out in front of some of these issues and make sure that our job is done so well and we communicate it so well that the EPA wouldn't feel like they need to come in here. And there wouldn't be an urge for them to do something that we know we can do well enough ourselves and still assure clean water.
Commissioner Goring?
It's kind of interesting that this is affecting every state in the United States. This isn't a matter of North Dakota just being affected, it's everyone. It's a taking. And it was directed by the administration. And that is an issue as we continue to look at some of these things. I mean, we can look at FDA's Food Safety Modernization Act as being onerous and unrealistic. We can look at Waters of the U.S., which uses terminology like significant nexus, connectivity, subsurface groundwater. I mean, we're going right after the heart of every drop of water above ground and below ground. We work with EPA. We have worked with EPA. This issue actually came up about 2.5 years ago when the conversation started down that pathway, and it was with Nancy Stoner in Denver, where we said, you know what, you're heading down the wrong road, and you're working with the Corps of Engineers, which no one seems to have a real control over or oversight. We need to step up and stop this type of guidance document that they were trying to push at that time. And then unfortunately, things got quiet. We thought we won the battle, and all of a sudden it pops up. This is a matter of all of us uniting, which we have across the state of North Dakota, all ag groups, and a lot of the public to push back on this issue because it's ownership of our water that we manage here in the state of North Dakota.
We'll open it to crosstalk.
Well, I think actually there's agreement on standing up for North Dakota's agricultural interests on that, and this is, of course, refreshing when we get into a debate, knowing that we would work with the agricultural groups across North Dakota who have also come out in opposition to it. I think it's fair to say that we can stand in opposition, and whether it's standing in opposition to this administration, it's certainly something, doesn't matter what party you are, you can disagree with the administration, you can disagree with the administration's arms, including the EPA, on many occasions. We know that North Dakotans come first. Our rights as North Dakotans, as farmers and ranchers, certainly comes first. And we can make that convincing argument regardless of which side of the aisle you're from. And I think North Dakotans have a long history of doing that. And we look out for each other on a rather personal basis.
We've been working with the ag community on this issue. We put together the Regulatory Review Committee, just one of many committees that we have to work on these types of issues, or whether it's the Farm Bill, whether it's pollinator plan. And we've came to a consensus on the issues that we do need to push back on and make our issues known to EPA. But the other thing that's happened and transpired in the last month is working within the state government. We're working with agencies like the Department of Health, the Water Commission, the Governor's Office, and the Commerce Department to design a set of comments and questions that push back on the federal government and how they're trying to approach this issue. Now, that's leadership, I would think, but it also goes back to show you something about how we all tend to work together to develop solutions for real problems with real results.
Any further comments on that topic, either candidates?
We may even see some action, I think, in the next legislative session on this, and good ideas can come from both sides of the aisle, even visiting with Representative Marvin Nelson up in the North Country in Rolette County that says maybe we should just name those navigable waters in state statute, and that was one way we could go, and we know then that it won't be left to definition by someone else, or if it need be, there'll be some point to debate from. So I think going forward we'll see the overreach, we'll make comments as a unified group in agriculture, and I think we'll present our case very well.
I think we're going to continue to see opportunities by activists to push back on EPA, and anytime you can leave any room that's open for subjectivity, I think we're going to be in a situation where the activists will use that to sue and settle, and it's going to continue to haunt us. We need to clarify this issue, we need to put it to bed, and they need to just look at navigable waters and stop trying to tie everything else to it.
All right, that leads us into our next question. The North Dakota Agriculture Department is part agricultural regulator and part agricultural promoter. Where is the greatest need and opportunity? Commissioner Goring.
Yeah, this kind of goes back to some of that earlier conversations when you talk about making it personal. Part of what we've stepped up to do in the Ag Department is, first of all, use social media. We got about 15,000 followers. It also means tapping into those programs like the Hunger-Free Garden Project or Pride of Dakota or local foods programs or our orchard program or even some of our specialty block grants where we can then go out, reach out, touch people in a real meaningful way and in a relevant way and get them involved in agriculture, understanding that agriculture does support 25% or more of our workforce. But it's also about telling the story about the diversity that exists in North Dakota. We produce almost 50 different commodities commercially in our state. Our topography is different from east to west, north to south. We have so many different aspects to agriculture that we need to find what is personal to each and every one of them and talk about that. And when you look at that, that also means respecting those choices. What type of agricultural system you have, whether it's organic, whether it's identity preserved, maybe it's seed production, maybe it's commercial production, maybe it's using biotechnology, maybe you're a conventional farmer, but all of those things offer benefits not only to those rural communities, to those farmers and ranchers, but also to the consumer.
Mr. Taylor.
I know that we got two parts to the question, both regulation and promotion, so I think both have a role. And a lot of our statewide offices are regulatory offices, but we don't often speak of the regulation side of it because that's not something that folks like to discuss. We know, though, that the regulation side of it is something that is good for business to have a level playing field. And if we look at the regulatory side, we have rules in place and we have structures in place so that operators who are doing a good job, whether it's in agriculture, whether it's in the pesticide division or the Board of Animal Health, or whether it's on the industrial commission seat that the Ag Commissioner sits on, that regulations allow the good players to flourish when they do their job well and they're not competing against those who won't follow the rules that may harm the industry in some cases or another. If the industry were to be harmed with a food disease outbreak, we want to make sure that we prevent that. Promotion, obviously, is something that we enjoy and we appreciate, and I've been a long-time member of the Pride of Dakota program, and we can see opportunities to promote all that North Dakota produces. And you don't have to have grown the crop to promote it and stand up for it in North Dakota. We produce a high-quality product that the world demands and that feeds our families. I think we can also do a little better job in terms of making sure that our youngest people know where their food comes from. And we have opportunities in Pride Dakota farm-to-school programs to make sure that we all realize this important process that produces food that then sustains us for our life, and we can certainly do that in the Ag Department.
I wholeheartedly believe that if you are going to regulate something, you should know something about it. You should be intimate with that industry. So whether we're talking about agriculture or whether we're talking about all the sectors within agriculture, in the Ag Department, and you're right, we do regulate animal health. And it's important because we need to make sure that we're protecting those livestock and we're protecting our neighbors' livestock. But it's also about meat and milk production. It's about our hatcheries. It's about egg production out there. It's about pesticides and fertilizers. It's about understanding that when you are going to develop rules and regulations, how are they going to impact? One of the first things that we look at before we move forward, and I love the staff that we're working with because they look at and they encompass everything they can that they know, along with a vast amount of discussion concerning how do we mitigate risk, how do we minimize impact, and how do we move forward to maximize opportunities. That's for the regulated industry and that's for the consumer. It's important that you know something about it so that you have the ability to regulate it in a proper manner.
Well, certainly we could say my years in animal health would make me the expert on that. But knowing that maybe I haven't grown buckwheat doesn't mean that we can't have staff that knows something about that or about flax or about honey or about pollinators. We know that we have a qualified group of individuals that come to work for the Department of Agriculture. And we trust them and respect them for the education that they bring and the experience that they bring. and we have to work together as a team. So certainly I agree that knowledge is something that we all bring with us. I'm thankful to have gotten a degree in ag economics from NDSU, so we can handle those economic questions that I think will decide very much the future of North Dakota in terms of how we balance agriculture and energy, for instance, and make sure that we have an industry to continue and sustain us after the energy has been harvested in this state. So we know that we have good people as a team that works on this so that our good producers, our good players have a level playing field, and they know where they stand, and they know that they don't have to compete against those that might do us harm.
We got an outstanding program in the department. It's called Education Compliance. We have some of the highest compliance ratings in the nation, even to the point that this last spring, EPA has approached us after getting beat up by Congress and said, okay, so how do you do your program? We have 82% compliance, but we go out and we don't play the gotcha game with the public or with the industries. We go out and educate them. We go out and work with them to show them these are the rules and regulations. Some are federal, some are state. This is what you need to do to comply. But we sit down with them in the manual and we explain to them what they need to do to come into compliance. We have EPA and we have our other states that only operate with 48 to 50% compliance.
Okay, well, that will close the crosstalk on that topic. We'll move to the next question with panelist Mark Conlon.
Mr. Taylor, the Ag Commissioner position is part of the Industrial Commission. Are you satisfied with the actions of this body, or are there changes that should be made, particularly as it pertains to balancing the needs of agriculture and those of energy development?
Thank you, Mark. This is a topic that comes up just about every day on the campaign trail, because people realize that the Ag Commissioner seat in North Dakota also means a seat on the Industrial Commission. And particularly when I'm visiting with friends and neighbors of my wife's in McKenzie County, where she was raised, and actually have probably members of the Northwest Landowners Association here tonight, that we can do more, and we need to do more to make sure that agriculture is upheld as we harvest the energy beneath the ground. That's why I brought out the Landowner's Bill of Rights. These are things that don't preclude oil development in any way, because we know we'll still get the oil and drill thousands of wells a year and produce a great amount for our state and for our country and the world, actually. If we look at the areas of tension, though, we can make sure that land isn't sterilized often by saltwater spills. We can do that. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. We know that as ArtLink made sure that when we mined the coal, we were able to put the land back together so that the generations ahead could say our grandparents did their job well when the landscape is quiet again. We know we can do that with oil and gas development as well, and I supported initiatives that the landowners had brought forward on that. And something really that seems small but is important for families, if we look at the distance between an occupied farmhouse and the well or the flare, so that their kid's bedroom window is not just 500 feet away from that well. We can still get the oil underneath their house and put it out like Texas at 1,000 or 1,300 feet.
Thank you for the question. We've had quite a few daunting challenges since the oil boom has really hit. And now it looks like it's going to be here for a long, long time. I believe we've stepped up and done a lot of things that have certainly helped move us very quickly into a better position. We've gotten rid of reserve pits, except for freshwater drilling. We've looked at a comprehensive approach to how we're going to deal with oil and gas development. We've got about 20,000 miles of pipeline in the ground, and we're probably going to have to put 20,000 more miles of pipeline in the ground, because if we're going to do anything to help alleviate some of our rail service issues, we need to move more oil out of this state in pipelines. And it's actually why I came forward with the Pipeline Reclamation Inspection Program. After dealing with so much of this, I'd say from May and June of 2009, getting calls about some of these issues and dealing with them personally and directly, it's time that we need to do something else and step up and address this issue. But it's also why I look at issues like pipelines, and we need to look at technology that actually works. Flow meters and pressure gauges do not detect a leak. We've proven that over and over again this summer. I've contacted a company a cell in Houston, Texas, which has technology out of Brazil that we can use, acoustic wave technology. They're in North Dakota looking for a place where we can tap into this and start utilizing that technology.
All right, and we'll open the topic to crosstalk.
I think there's a wealth of topics to discuss in this area, and one of the issues when I visit with producers is we know an oil spill is bad. It can be cleaned up, but what really creates the most fear is the saltwater spill. The fact that it'll sterilize the ground that they need to make a living on for a generation or more. And if the flow meters and the pressure cutoff switches don't work every time, I don't assume anything is 100%, yet the Industrial Commission does require mechanisms within a quarter mile of a body of water. So are they requiring something that doesn't work? I don't think we can have it both ways. If it's not 100%, I still think today, before the next technology is available, we still need to give our producers the assurance that we can prevent some of these spills, or at least a good share of them. Seat belts maybe won't save my kids in every car accident, but I still buckle them up when I put them in the car. I think if we look at just a handful of issues here, knowing that agriculture needs to have a strong voice in this area. The Ag Commissioner is there to provide that voice. It wouldn't hurt to walk the 6 floors down from the office during the legislative session when some of these issues come up and landowners are concerned, and rather than just let an employee of the Industrial Commission stand in opposition to some of these very issues that landowners believe are important and want to move forward. So the pipeline inspection system, know that we obviously need to do that, but we've got mechanisms in place already with rules as I visit with landowners that say those trenches should be filled in and the plan should be in place after 180 days. Maybe rather than hire inspectors, we should do the job that we can already do with the rules that are in place.
I'm not in a position to pull more inspectors away from what they're supposed to be doing also, which is inspecting those well pads and those well sites. And quite frankly, those farmers and ranchers come to me. They call me because you are the Ag Commissioner. Can you help me out with this situation? I take people at first blush when they tell me they got an issue. I call the company and I ask them to go out there and check it out. They do that. And I don't get called back, so I'm assuming it's getting done. But we're going to have to put a lot more pipe in the ground, and that means providing assurances and not giving people a false sense of security by putting in a flow meter and a pressure gauge. That's the reason I moved forward and continued to look for some technology that would work. And I believe we found the technology, and it's going to be applicable here in North Dakota, here in the energy sector. And with respect to remediation when we have saltwater spills, this last couple of years, I've come to find out that we have tiling going on out there where the pumps haven't even been turned on. Sat down and visited this last spring with companies and with the Department of Mineral Resources about getting those pumps turned on, because much like agriculture already does, we use tiling to correct soil issues when we have high salt concentrations, and it'll work well for our issues with saltwater spills too.
Thank you. Our next question will be presented by panelist Dana Bond.
Commissioner Goring, what do you see as the role of the Ag Department in communicating the value of North Dakota agriculture to North Dakota citizens?
There's a great deal of interaction and communication, not only with agriculture, but it goes back to what some of the previous conversations have already been about. How do you make it personal? One of the things that was so disheartening to me was a few years ago, we had noxious weed issue, and we communicated that. We communicated to the public, not one call from the media. Did put out the next following week a news release about one weed that would actually make some of our pets sick. My phone rang off the hook. It became personal all of a sudden. People don't understand that when you start to affect how how a farm or a ranch is going to be affected economically or by other regulations and rules, all of a sudden it affects them too. They just don't see it. We need to step out. We need to think about how do we personalize that. It's why we use social media. It's why we use our Hunger Food Garden program. It's why we look at our local foods programs. It's ways to tap in to the consumer and talk to them about the value of agriculture and why they need to stay connected with food. and food and agricultural production.
Mr. Taylor?
Thanks, Dana. And I think when we look at the value, we can always assign some hard dollar values to what agriculture is worth in North Dakota, what it means to our economy. I think we have to carry that commitment through in everything we do as Ag Commissioner. Whether you're on the stump or at the bully pulpit speaking to a group of people that maybe doesn't have a direct connection to agriculture, whether you're applying for USDA grants that we haven't in this department right now that extends the coupons available for women, infants, and children and low-income senior citizens to do something as simple as buy food at our farmers markets that we have in North Dakota so that we stand up for all of agriculture. Our largest conventional producers that make the brunt of the production in this state, those in the middle, and those who are smaller that may go to a farmer's market with part of their production. I know that as we go forward, it's going to be more of a challenge with the number 2 industry that's so important in North Dakota and energy to make sure that we don't lose sight of agriculture. As a Bush Fellow, I had the opportunity to study some in Norway and look at the oil economies of other countries. And one of the things that they found was sometimes we lose sight of what we had. There's a little concept called the Dutch disease, and us economists like these weird things, but in the Netherlands they had a big gas boom, natural gas boom, that when it was finished and they'd been making profits, they found out that agriculture and their existing manufacture had actually been hampered in the process. Experts will say that you make investments in infrastructure and education. We do that throughout agriculture for the next generation of agriculturists and the infrastructure it takes to get our product to market. That's how we make sure it survives.
All right, and we'll open this topic to crosstalk.
We look at the value of agriculture in North Dakota, and we'll just take North Dakota. Being one of our leading industries, one of our largest industries in the state, we need to think about that workforce, we need to think about infrastructure, we need to think about rail service. It's one of the reasons we stepped up and worked on the Port of Vancouver agreement so that we could provide in a backhaul situation the opportunity to move commodities out of North Dakota into the Pacific Northwest and serve a large part of that industry. It isn't going to solve everything, but it certainly is going to add more and more value back home. It's going to change the basis. It's going to put more dollars in our farmers' pockets. Those are types of things that we need to keep working for, and we need to continue to engage the public to understand some of that value. Most recently, or I should say more so last October, the IRS changed its tax code, and the Section 179 depreciation schedule changed on us, and it went from $500,000 to $25,000. You know that in other states where they have manufacturing of tractors, combines, and other equipment, they're feeling the hurt right now. Those manufacturing plants are shutting down. We're seeing the effects. We need to continue to draw that connect those dots and make that relationship and help people understand how important agriculture is to their bottom dollar, not just in feeding them, but in employing them also.
I think everyone realizes, of course, the value of agriculture when we see a downturn in commodity prices like we have currently. And you put on top of that $160 million in losses, mostly due to basis from the rail congestion that we have. We know that the plan on the Port of Vancouver would amount to about 2 unit trains per month, and that's helpful. It's helpful to the specialty crops that would be able to use those containers, but it doesn't do anything for the vast amount of commodities in North Dakota that farmers will now, as they bring in the 14 harvest, probably be piling on the ground, and we're going to risk some to spoilage potentially. We know that we need to also ask our energy partners to use the pipeline space that they've got currently. We have pipeline space going unused right now. It's an either-or position. Our farmers are going to lose $160 million, or we can make sure that we utilize every inch of pipeline space we got. And it goes to markets in Guernsey, Wyoming. It goes to markets in Clearbrook, Minnesota, and then goes on to Cushing, Oklahoma, and goes on to the port. So these are real markets as well. Our farmers are losing basis. Our farmers are losing a buck-plus basis on their commodities. We need to work together to make sure that they stand in front of the line, side by side with energy, and don't have to take a back seat.
We need support from the administration. We need support from governors like Governor Dayton in Minnesota that send us nasty letters telling us that we need to stop shipping oil by rail, but then when we continue to try to build a pipeline, they stop it or delay it.
All right, that completes our crosstalk. We'll move on to a new topic. What are your views on the current corporate farming law? How does it help or hinder North Dakota agriculture?
Mine, right?
Yes, Mr. Taylor, you may
Okay,
go
thanks.
first.
Thanks, Al. The corporate farming, in my 10 years in the Senate, 5 sessions, there's at least a couple of the sessions where changes were proposed to North Dakota's longstanding anti-corporate farming law, as it be. I always stood up strong for the family farmers and ranchers in North Dakota to maintain the law as it is. I believe we have a strong system of family agriculture in North Dakota that works for us. And I believe that if there's capital needs, we can find ways to get capital without going to corporations beyond the family corporations that we have currently in North Dakota. But to open it up beyond that, I had not supported when I was in the Senate. We do have a bank in North Dakota that's unique, only one in the country. We need to look at that as a way to help extend credit, and they partner with local lenders who get to participate with this state-owned Bank of North Dakota. And I think we can find ways to get capital and make sure that agriculture is strong, but it's strong as a family system. I know that we raise a lot of wonderful commodities in this state and some really good cattle. But you know what we raise that's really, really good is our families and the children that are raised on these farms. And we do that in family units in this state. We do it with some family corporations, but it is still based on family, and I'm proud to support that.
Commissioner Goring.
I have concerns about opening up the corporate farming law to do a vast amount of business the way that it has been suggested at times. I would rather see us tweak it and modify it. First of all, if you open it all the way up, you give nonprofits and activists the opportunity to come into North Dakota and compete for that land against our farmers and ranchers. But there is a high cost of doing business in agriculture that's so tough for our young farmers and ranchers that are trying to get into agriculture. We have great markets, well, in livestock right now, and 2 years ago we had great markets for our grain sector. A lot of debt was acquired during that period of time that put an awful lot of pressure on those young producers. Now we're trying to crawl our way out of that with a collapsing bad ag market. This comes down to modifying it maybe just a bit so that at least they can borrow for equipment, or they can have some type of investment for equipment, operating, and for livestock. But at least keep it away from the land portion of it, and never let anybody in a corporate sense own the land, because then they're going to start to control other aspects of the operation.
All right, we'll open this topic to crosstalk.
Just smiling a little bit, knowing that from my time in the Senate, once a bill is proposed, you can't just open it up a little bit. And that's just the nature of the process in North Dakota. When a bill is presented and you're going to open up the corporate farming law, it's anybody's guess how it'll come out of that session, whether it's the little bit that the bill started with or the whole lot that it could end up with at the end, depending on the decisions of 2 bodies of the legislature. I know that we have a strong law that does keep the nonprofits as well as the for-profits from competing with our farmers and ranchers for the purchase of land. We have high land values in North Dakota, much like the rest of the country. It took us a little longer, but those land values have definitely increased, and they are a problem necessarily when you want to enter agriculture if you don't have a neighbor or a parent or a grandparent that puts you in that position. We know that whether it's federally or in the state, we've got good programs at the Bank of North Dakota. On the federal side, I actually was one of the producers that started with the Farm Service Agency, the old Farmers Home Administration. That's how I bought my first group of cows and the machinery it took, and was able to work into our operation. It was a low interest rate at that time, which is certainly helpful to producers, and proud to say that we paid every dime of that back. My father used the Bank of North Dakota as well, paid every dime of that back as well, and let's work with those programs. They're helpful to beginners in this business.
They are, but at this point, you could give them interest-free money and they still couldn't make it. You need some help, and when you don't have a family unit to help out, where can you go? And those are issues. There might be opportunities to at least tweak or change something in the event that you can provide a little more support when it comes to equipment, to livestock, to buildings, and even for operating. And I'm not suggesting we go wholeheartedly down that path. I'm just saying, if we're looking at the law itself, we need to keep it closed, but at least open up some other parameters, some other avenues to help our young farmers and ranchers have an opportunity in this business. My sons are lucky. I'm going to be able to help them, at least to some degree, move into the farm and the ranch. But that doesn't work for everybody else. When I got started, I didn't have that. I bought the place from my grandparents, from my grandmother. So it is a challenge, but that was a different day. Now, prices are the same as what they were 20 years ago, but we're dealing with land prices that are 10 times higher. We're dealing with equipment costs that are 20 to 30 times higher than what it used to be. We need to find more opportunities. We can use systems, we can use banks, we can use programs, but again, interest-free money, you still can't pay it back.
All right, that completes our crosstalk time, and we are out of time for questions. Candidates, we thank you for being here tonight. You will now have 60 seconds to each provide a closing statement. Mr. Taylor, you may go first.
Thanks, Ellen. I want to thank everyone who came out tonight, whether it's here at the Belle Mayhoos or maybe listening across the state on the live-streamed webcast. I'm asking every one of you here and across the state, though, to make sure we exercise our precious right to vote come November 4th. Protect that right by using your right. And know that I'd be honored to have your vote in this race for Ag Commissioner. We're at a historic time of great opportunity in North Dakota. And navigating this time of opportunity, I know takes the very best leadership we can put forward, particularly in a race when we're talking about our #1 industry of agriculture and the importance of a seat on the Industrial Commission. We need to ask the hard questions, find the innovative solutions. We need to bring people together, and that'll require both leadership and balance. As General Patton that said, if everyone's thinking alike, then someone's not thinking. We need to make sure that Ag's voice is articulate and strong and brings forward ideas every year, not just in an election year, because leaders do the right thing even when no one is looking. I appreciate your time, and I'd greatly appreciate your vote.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Commissioner Goring, please present your closing statement.
I want to thank all of our hosts for sponsoring this event this evening. North Dakota is the envy of the nation. We have the lowest unemployment. We have the fastest growing economy. We're ranked as the best run, best performing state in the nation. And we've even been bestowed the honor of being the happiest state in the nation. And how do you edge out Hawaii? That's quite an accomplishment. But it is no accident. It is great leadership. And we do have challenges, but that's why we step up to develop solutions for problems with results. And we'll continue to do so. And we will continue to support those initiatives that best serve North Dakota: diversity, innovation, research, and trade, because it fuels our economy. I'm proud to serve the people of North Dakota, and I'll ask for your vote on November 4th. God bless. Safe travels.
As we conclude our debate this evening, we thank our panelists and our timer, Dakota Media Access, the Bismarck Tribune, and the volunteers from the League of Women Voters for organizing this debate. Thank you to the viewers at home and the audience members here tonight at the Belle Mayhoos Auditorium for taking the time to learn more about the issues and our candidates for North Dakota Agriculture Commissioner. This recorded program will replay several times on Government Access Channel 2 and will be available for online viewing at freetv.org in the days leading up to the November 4th election. Before we close this forum, I want to remind you that voting in North Dakota is very simple, and you can find voting information at your county auditor's office and from the Office of the North Dakota Secretary of State. Thank you.
Thank you.